The road to Blackwood Asylum was more suggestion than asphalt. Trees leaned in from both sides, their branches clawing across the windshield, blotting out the last of the daylight. The GPS had stopped working miles ago. Alex gripped the steering wheel tighter, his camera rig bouncing in the passenger seat. "Almost there," he muttered, though no one asked. Rachel leaned forward from the back, pressing her phone against the glass. "You sure this is the right way? It feels like we're driving into a grave." "Perfect vibe," Ben said, grinning. He always grinned when he was nervous. "Creepy road, creepy asylum, creepy video, views guaranteed." Chloe, quiet until now, traced her finger across the fogging window. "I read about this place. They say the fire never really went out. That if you stand too close, you can still smell it on your clothes." Dazed, the van lurched over a pothole. Ahead, through the mist, the gates appeared. Iron bars twisted, chain links dangling uselessly. Beyond them rose the asylum. 4 stories of brick blackened by soot, windows broken, ivy strangling its walls. The central tower loomed like a watchful eye. Alex lifted his camera, filming as they pulled up. The red light blinked. "And here we are," he narrated softly. "Blackwood Asylum. Closed in 1958 after a fire killed dozens. They say it was an accident. Locals say it wasn't." The gates groaned when Ben tugged the chain. It snapped far too easily, links scattering like teeth across the ground. The asylum waited. Rachel shivered as the 4 of them stepped inside. The courtyard was overgrown, weeds taller than their knees. The air smelled faintly of ash and something sour, like rotting chemicals. Then came the sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing across the courtyard. They froze, scanning the broken windows, the dark entryway. No one was there. "Probably an animal," Ben said, though his voice didn't carry much conviction. Alex raised the camera higher, the lens fixed on the yawning entrance of the asylum. "Once we go in," he said, almost whispering, "there's no going back." And with that, they crossed the threshold. The doors creaked open, heavy oak swollen with decades of rain. Inside, the main hall stretched long and cavernous. Dust floated in beams of dying sunlight, settling over broken furniture, cracked tiles, and the remnants of wheelchairs rusting in corners. The explorers' footsteps echoed too loudly, swallowed by the asylum's hollow chest. Ben laughed nervously. "Feels like the set of every horror movie ever made." Rachel's flashlight beam landed on a long desk where visitors once signed in. Papers still clung to clipboards, their ink faded. She leaned closer and frowned. "This one's dated 58, the very day of the fire." Chloe's voice trembled. "Read it." Rachel's lips moved, whispering the names on the list. Each line was smudged, blurred. But the last 4 names were sharp. clear. Alex lifted his camera with shaking hands, whispering to the lens, "We're locked in." The slam of the doors still echoed when they turned down the first hallway. Paint peeled in long strips from the walls, revealing raw plaster beneath, like scars. The smell of mildew and smoke grew stronger the deeper they went. Their flashlights cut across rusted bed frames and overturned trays. Wheelchairs slumped in corners, their leather cracked, their wheels locked with rust. "This was the East Ward," Chloe whispered. "They kept the long-term patients here." Ben forced a laugh. Patients or prisoners? Alex filmed every corner, narrating into the mic. The Blackwood records claim humane treatment, but witness accounts say otherwise. Solitary confinement, forced procedures, shock therapy without anesthesia. Most patients had no family to protest. As if summoned by the words, something scraped in the darkness ahead. Rachel swung her light. At the far end of the hall, a figure sat slouched in a chair, back to them. A hospital gown clung to its shoulders, threadbare and gray with dust. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling. The figure didn't move. Alex adjusted the focus on his camera, zooming in. "Is that?" The chair was empty. Rachel gasped. The beam of her flashlight shook. "I saw it, I swear." The sound of wheels broke the silence. A rusted wheelchair rolled out of a side room and into the hall, squealing as it turned on its own. Ben's grin faltered. "Okay, that's new." Chloe bent down near a pile of scattered papers. "These are patient files." She held one up, the paper stiff with age. A black and white photograph of a man stared back. Hollow eyes, unkempt hair. Beneath the photo, his name had been burned away, leaving only the word incomplete. She opened another. This time, no photo at all. Just blank lines, waiting to be filled in. Her breath hitched. They're empty. Like they're waiting for... The intercom above them crackled. Dust sifted from the ceiling. A distorted voice whispered through the static. "Welcome, patients. Your treatment begins now." A hallway narrowed, bending toward a set of double doors with shattered windows. A rusted sign above them read, "Surgical Wing." Ben muttered, "Great. Knives and ghosts, my two least favorite things." The doors resisted at first, then groaned open. The room beyond was vast, an amphitheater of peeling white tiles. Rusted operating tables stood in the center beneath skeletal lamps that dangled from broken mounts. Stainless steel trays, blackened with age, were scattered across the floor. Rachel's flashlight passed over scalpels, clamps, bone saws, left behind, frozen mid-procedure. "Why didn't they clear this out?" she whispered. Alex whispered into his camera. "Rumors say the fire started here. Experimental treatments. Some called it the cure." Chloe stepped forward, her light trembling across the walls. Dark stains stretched down the tiles in hand-like smears. She swallowed hard. "They didn't cure anyone. They fed something. The temperature dropped. Their breath misted in the air. Suddenly, Alex's camera glitched. The screen flickered, showing static. Then images that weren't there. Figures in straitjackets lined the walls, heads twitching, mouths moving in silence. For a heartbeat, it looked as if the theater was full of patients watching them. He blinked, and the room was empty again. I saw them, he stammered. Dozens, just standing there. Rachel froze. I hear them. A whisper slithered through the room, soft but close, as though dozens of mouths pressed against their ears. Lie down. We'll make you better. The operating lamp above flickered and swung. Instruments clattered off the trays and hit the floor. The double doors slammed shut behind them. Ben charged back and shoved against them, but they wouldn't budge. He pounded with both fists. The whispers rose, overlapping, urgent now. Treatment, treatment, treatment. The floor beneath the table darkened. Black shadows spread like liquid, pooling, stretching toward their feet. The shapes of hands reached up from the darkness, clawing for ankles. Chloe screamed, kicking free, stumbling backward. The hallway narrowed into darkness, the stench of burned wood and chemicals thickening with every step. Their flashlights flickered, casting novice cones of light across scorched walls. This must be the records wing, Chloe whispered, pointing to the charred remains of a wooden sign. Administration. Inside, the air was suffocating. Black ash clung to the floor, crunching under their boots. Rows of file cabinets leaned like tombstones, drawers warped by heat. In the far corner, a desk lay buried in soot. A single book rested on top, untouched by fire. Rachel brushed it clean with trembling fingers. It was a leather-bound journal. She opened it, and the first page was written in hurried scrawl. The experiment is complete. Madness is not cured, it is harvested. The shadows accept it, and in return, we are free of it. But the hunger Ben kicked a cabinet, his nerves breaking. So what? The doctors summoned demons? That's the story? Alex shook his head, pale. Not demons. Patients. They didn't cure them. They gave them to something. Chloe turned another page, her hands shaking. The fire will cleanse the failure. But if the circle is broken, the shadows will remain. They must be contained within the walls. If not, the last sentence ended in a jagged streak of ink, as if the writer had been dragged away. A low rumble rolled through the room. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. Then the walls began to move. At first it was subtle, shadows shifting against the scorched plaster. But then the shapes grew sharper. Elongated figures stretched across the walls, their mouths open in silent screams. One shadow clawed at the floorboards, and the wood splintered as though touched by real fingers. Rachel stumbled back. They're still here, the patients they never left. The shadows surged, slithering along the walls and ceiling, pooling near the explorer's feet. Faces twisted in the dark, eyeless, mouths gaping. Ben shouted, swinging his flashlight wildly. "Back! Stay back!" The beam tore through the shadows, scattering them for only a moment before they reformed. Stronger. The intercom crackled overhead, louder than before. "Treatment incomplete. Continue the experiment." One of the shadows detached from the wall and stood, three-dimensional now. Its form was thin, its movements jerky, like a puppet on tangled strings. It reached for Alex. He dropped the camera, screaming. Rachel grabbed him, yanking him toward the hallway. "Run!" They bolted as the room erupted with shrieks. Dozens of patient voices screaming, overlapping, echoing from every corner. The fire alarms shrieked to life, though no sprinklers worked. Red lights flashed in the hallways, bathing everything in a sick glow. The asylum had remembered the fire, and it was beginning again. The fire alarms still wailed in the distance, their red strobes flashing down cracked hallways. But the explorers didn't slow until they collapsed in a room with half-collapsed walls. It was circular, its floor scorched black. At the center, carved deep into the tiles, lay a ritual circle, burned into the stone itself. Ash filled the grooves like veins. Rachel's voice shook. This is where it started." Chloe knelt, brushing the ash with trembling fingers. "It wasn't just a fire. This was a ritual. They tried to trap the shadows here, but it didn't work." Alex picked up his camera again, focusing on the charred circle. The journal said, someone had to stay. That's how it worked. One inside the circle, so the rest could leave. Ben shook his head violently. No way. That's just some occult garbage." The intercom crackled, louder this time, as if the building itself listened. The voice layered over itself, hundreds of whispers overlapping until the walls rattled. Rachel backed against the doorway, shaking her head. "They're not asking. They're telling us." The shadows began to gather, crawling along the floor, filling the circle like black water. Faces formed within them, patients screaming, mouths wide, hands clutching at nothing. Chloe gasped as her flashlight beam landed on the wall. Names were scratched into the plaster. Hundreds of them. Old, faded, some fresh. At the very bottom, 4 new names glistened, as though carved moments ago. Alex, Rachel, Ben, Chloe. Ben stumbled back, pale. "It already knows us." The shadows rose higher, pulling into shapes that resembled bodies, jerking with unnatural movements. The ritual chamber pulsed with a life of its own. Shadows rising like smoke given shape. The circle glowed faintly, its black ash smoldering as if reignited by unseen fire. The intercom whispered, rhythmic, steady. "One must remain. One must remain." Ben's chest heaved. "We're not doing this. We'll find another way out." The shadows laughed. A chorus of voices, old and broken. They slid across the walls, blocking the doorway, twisting the corridors into endless loops. Every escape collapsed back into the chamber. Rachel gripped Alex's arm, panic in her eyes. "It won't let us leave. Not unless—" Her gaze fell to the circle. "No!" Alex snapped. "Don't even think it. We're not sacrificing anyone." But Chloe's face had already gone pale with resignation. She pointed to the wall of names, fresh scratches glowing in the strobe light. As if to answer, the shadows surged. Dozens of hands formed from the black smoke, clawing at the air. Faces pressed forward, mouths wide in silent screams. Alex raised his camera like a shield. "Stay back!" The screen glitched, flickering with images. Doctors in blood-stained coats. Patients writhing in restraints. Flames consuming the asylum. Then, suddenly, his own face, pale and terrified, staring back at him. The intercom boomed, clear now, louder than ever. "Welcome, patient. Treatment begins now." The shadows struck. They swarmed Ben first, dragging him toward the circle. He fought, kicking, screaming, but the floor itself seemed to swallow his boots. Rachel and Chloe lunged, pulling him back, but the shadows only laughed. Ben's eyes locked on theirs, desperate. "Don't let go." But the asylum had already decided. With a final scream, he was yanked into the circle. The ash flared, burning bright white. The shadows froze, then sank back into the floor, retreating like a tide. The intercom crackled once more. Patient accepted. The doors at the end of the hall groaned open. For the first time, daylight bled through. Rachel collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Chloe pulled her up, whispering, "We can't waste it. We have to go." Alex clutched his camera, still recording, his face hollow. He's gone. He's gone. Together, the three stumbled through the open doors. Alex turned back, the red light still blinking on his camera. The last thing it captured was the front wall of the asylum, where 4 names were now carved fresh into the stone. Alex, Rachel, Chloe, Ben. Locals still avoid Blackwood Asylum. They say the fire never died, that the walls breathe smoke when the wind shifts. But sometimes, hikers report hearing something else. A voice over a dead intercom, whispering through the static. New patients admitted. Treatment continues. And if you stand too close to the gates, you'll see new names scratched into the stone. Names you don't recognize. Names that don't belong to anyone alive.